Dear kind and loving Father, who art in heaven, as we embark on this venture in the interest of the air conditioning and refrigeration industry, we ask, dear God, that our discussions and interactions be meaningful, respectful, and transparent as we strive to uplift the standards in these industries, especially the air conditioning industry. We ask, dear God, that you grant us the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to engage in a meaningful way and bring about positive change. Amen.
A pleasant evening, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant evening, pleasant night. Once again, it's a privilege to be on Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Talks. I always have to thank God when I could sleep at night in an unconscious state, and then when I wake in the morning, the following morning, and breathe the oxygen that the good Lord has provided for us, hear the birds chirping, the sun that shines, all those things what man is not in charge of, all by the grace of God. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I have a program for you. I would say educational. I'll try my utmost. While I'm coming down tonight, I had a little bit of nostalgia. I went back in times. I went back many moons ago, scores of years ago, when I started the air conditioning. It took me back years ago, and I said, those days didn't have any cell phones. To those of you who are in the industry, my timing when I started, there wasn't any cell phones. What we had was walkie-talkies. You know, you're working for a company, and they would give you a walkie-talkie, or some of the vehicles would have CB radio, you know, like what they have in police vehicles. So they would call CM1, coming CM1, receiving. That is what we had in those days, walkie-talkies. And then there was a little graduate from the walkie-talkies, and there were the beepers. Some of you young men might even be aware of what I'm speaking of tonight. Then you would have the beeper. And when you get a beep, you read the message, and then you have to look for a phone. You have to be moving around with quarters in your pocket. And then you would call. So those are the times I came from in terms of the air conditioning. And those days, mostly window units. There were massive split systems, DX systems and what have you, but there were minimal small split units. So it created a bit of nostalgia as I think back all those years as I was coming back here, I was coming here tonight. And we have reached and we have come a long way in the air conditioning industry because we now have cell phones, we have different types of units, yeah? And we also have different types of refrigerants. In those days, we had some refrigerants which was not ozone friendly, like the R12, R22, R11, 502. All these refrigerants was not ozone friendly. And so a new refrigerant came on the market, which was the 410. The 410 refrigerant, which replaced the R22. And that was some years ago, approximately, I believe, 18 to 20 years ago. And now we are hearing that they are phasing down the R410. They are phasing down, soon to be phased out. And so today, there are new refrigerants which will be coming in air conditioning units, which I have a little video, so I ask and crave your indulgence as we go into this slide in terms of the truth about the new refrigerants.
We're going to be talking about the new refrigerants that are coming to the market in the end of 2024, beginning of 2025 in North America. Specifically, we're talking about R32 and R454B. We're going to be talking specifically about what makes these refrigerants differently, what you can expect, whether or not you should wait to get equipment if you're on the fence about getting equipment now. There's a lot of misinformation about these refrigerants, as well as what's going to happen with the existing refrigerants that are currently in phase, specifically R410A, which is widely used by all manufacturers in North America. And we're going to talk about what's going to happen to equipment that maybe just got installed that had 410A in it, and when that 410A phase out schedule is actually going to take place. And spoiler alert, it's going to be a while, but we'll tell you about that in this video and more. But before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you smash that like button for the algorithm and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. We put out daily and weekly content on how you can get the best HVAC for your home. So if you're in the market for HVAC system replacement and want to know how to get the best HVAC for your home, primarily what we talk about on this channel. And in this video, like I said, we're going to be talking about specifically the new refrigerants that are coming to the market at the end of this year and beginning of 2025. Now, first off, let's talk about the two different refrigerants and what actually makes them different. Now, R32 is one of the refrigerants that's coming to North America, and another one is R454B. These are designed to replace R410A, which has been in existence and use for the past.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the video continues, we are speaking about two refrigerants, the R32. Now, this video is approximately 12 minutes long, and I think I will interject ever so often so that we'll have an understanding as to the new refrigerants which will be soon in our new air-conditioned units, the R32 and the R454B. So as the director will continue, and I will stop whenever I think I need to interject to highlight based on what is being presented. So go ahead, director.
Is R454B. These are designed to replace R410A, which has been in existence and use for the past 20 years. Now, if you're asking why are these refrigerants suddenly being phased out, the reason they're being phased out is because the quote-unquote GWP, which is a rating that's given to a refrigerant, which stands for global warming potential, as well as ODP, which is a rating that's given to a refrigerant, which stands for ozone depletion potential. Those, and I just put that in quotation marks because it's a number that is created by the manufacturer. It's really hard to gauge, at least in my opinion. From what I've read, they've actually changed. If you look at the history of any of the refrigerants that have come out, they actually adjust the GWPs up and down. It's just a rating scale given to a particular refrigerant. And 410A, although it has a 0 ODP, or the GWP is actually much higher. And what it means, to give you an example, let's say a refrigerant, a GWP of 100, that would mean that 1 pound of refrigerant is equivalent to the impact of 100 pounds of carbon in the atmosphere. Now, the main motivation behind this, or this all has to do with legislation and the EPA phasing out refrigerants that have a GWP above 750. So R410A has a GWP of over 2000, which means that it is going to be phased out eventually, but that's actually not going to happen until about 2040. So 2037 is the end of the phase down schedule. And then basically in 2040 is my understanding of when it's completely phased out in terms of production. Up until then, they're no longer manufacturing, so you won't be able to buy 410A equipment in 2025, but in terms of being able to get refrigerant or parts or things to service your existing equipment, that will still be available into the coming years. So that's not really a concern. That's the big benefit. If you ask me and you want my honest opinion, it kind of sounds like planned obsolescence to me, which is kind of like, you know, when Apple updates the iPhone and suddenly that software update just made your phone so unbearably slow that you had to go out and buy a new one. So this kind of feels a little bit like that to me. We are technically going to get some efficiency gains, which I'll talk about in a second, but that's just my opinion. It kind of strikes me as planned obsolescence in terms of a phase out by the EPA. Now, as far as R32 and R454B and what the difference is, R32 is going to be offered by Daikin, Amana, and Goodman as that's going to be the refrigerant they use, while a lot of other manufacturers are going to be using 454B. Now, R32 is a single product. It is not a blend, whereas 454B is actually a blended refrigerant. And what that means is it's a combination of other refrigerants. refrigerants. And what that translates to from a service perspective in terms of how it affects you is that when you have an R32 system, you'll actually be able to top off the refrigerant. So if it's a little low on refrigerant, let's say by a pound or something because it lost of refrigerant and it just leaked some out or it was a little short, you could top that off with a system that uses R454B. You technically have to recover all the refrigerant and then recharge the system with that. Now, the truth is that was supposed to be the protocol for R410A because that is technically a blended refrigerant as well. And if you talk to any technician out there, I don't know of a single technician that doesn't just top off R410A. So we'll see how that actually comes into play in the field. You know, if we're having chronic issues with the system, we might not top it off and might recover and recharge fresh virgin refrigerant, but that's kind of rare. That would then fix it unless there was something else. The reason is because if your refrigerant is not going to have the same properties and function the same way as if it was the proper blended ratio, where if it's like, you know, 70-30 versus 60-40 of the refrigerants that make it up, it's going to function a little bit differently and it's going to affect how it performs. And so that's one of the, you know, potential benefits of R32 is that it's not a blended refrigerant. But both these refrigerants, one of the things one of the pieces of information is that they are actually flammable. Now, they are mildly flammable, and what that means or how that's designed in terms of the classification for these refrigerants, which is they are classified as an A2L refrigerant. What that means is that they will only ignite.
Now, I would like us to pay particular attention. I would like us to pay particular attention to where they indicated lightly flammable. There are certain procedures to take place so that technicians in the future with these new type of gas, especially the R32, is lightly flammable. So pay attention as we go along with this slide. Go ahead, Director.
The, you know, potential benefits of R32 is that it's not a blended refrigerant. But both these refrigerants, one of the things one of the pieces of information is that they are actually flammable. Now, they are mildly flammable, and what that means or how that's designed in terms of the classification for these refrigerants, which is they are classified as an A2L refrigerant. What that means is that they will only ignite if an ignition source is applied. So that means if you hold your barbecue lighter up and you let it rip and just let that R32 out, it might ignite, and then when it does ignite, if it's burning, as soon as you turn off your barbecue lighter and remove the flame, it's going to extinguish. So it needs an external source for it to ignite. That's why it's mildly flammable by comparison with some of the, you know, natural refrigerants, which is things like propane and butane, which are highly flammable.
So ladies and gentlemen, most of the young men who may be looking on, we saw in the slide that the R32 is mildly flammable. So in the near future, as we are seeing already, we have units in our country with R32 and 404B. And what we should look for in our units is the SEER rating. It is important to look at the SEER rating in our units, as we will go to what is SEER rating and what is the definition of SEER rating. So this slide explains the R32 and the other refrigerant. So we will now look at the SEER rating of our units. When we are about to purchase our units, we will be going to more or less look at the SEER rating of the units. So right away, we will go into SEER rating. What is SEER rating?
And this video will explain what SEER ratings mean and how they factor into overall efficiency and ultimately your HVAC purchase. SEER stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio. The SEER rating of a unit is the cooling output of the system during a typical cooling season divided by the total electric energy used during that same period.
Now, the SEER rating is important in purchasing a unit and trying to identify the efficiency of the unit. SEER rating is the Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio. And with these, there are numbers which would identify the SEER rating of the specific brand unit. So we have to pay attention as to the SEER rating of the unit to have an idea, the capacity and how the unit would function. So as it is being explained, let us listen to what is the SEER rating of a unit. Go ahead, Director.
The rating of a unit is the cooling output of the system during a typical cooling season divided by the total electric energy used during that same period. The higher the SEER rating means the greater the unit's efficiency. Your heating and cooling system uses more energy than any other appliance in your home. When it's time to replace or add to your HVAC system, you'll want to pay attention to the SEER level of the potential air conditioner. Remember, the higher the SEER number, the more efficient the unit, saving you more money on energy costs in the long run. The US EPA currently requires residential air conditioners manufactured and installed after January 1, 2015 to have a minimum SEER rating of 13 for the northern states and minimum of 14 SEER in the southwest and southeast states. Many existing homes with older air conditioners may have a SEER rating of 10 or less. You can usually find your system's SEER rating on an Energy Guide sticker on your outside condensing unit. If your system is more than 15 years old, consider investing in a newer unit with a higher SEER to save annually on your energy bill. For example, say your current air conditioner has a SEER rating of 10. If you upgraded to a 14 SEER air conditioner, your power consumption would be reduced by 29% per year. Depending on how much electricity is used and the cost per kilowatt, you could save up to $1,500 over 5 years and up to $3,000 over 10 years in energy cost. HVACdirect.com has an online SEER energy efficiency calculator you can use to help predict the energy cost you'll save with various SEER ratings. While the stated SEER rating is an excellent starting point when considering a new air conditioner, there are individual variables which may affect the actual SEER rating experienced. The stated SEER rating represents the potential efficiency of the unit under perfect conditions. The air conditioner's efficiency also depends on the right sizing of the unit for your home, along with correct installation and an evaluation of other efficiency variables such as ductwork and window airflow leaks. Additionally, keep in mind that your air conditioner doesn't operate independently. It's tied to your furnace or air handler system, which is responsible for moving the cool air throughout the house. Your furnace or air handler's age, condition, and style are definite factors in your air conditioner's SEER rating. As you shop for heat...
So, ladies and gentlemen, we get an idea as to what is the SEER rating and the importance of you knowing the SEER rating of a unit when you are purchasing a unit. And to the technicians, the young men out there who are doing the air conditioning, start looking at the labels. It is important to read labels, and more so with the new type of refrigerants which is coming our way as we face down the older refrigerants. So it is important to know the SEER rating. Now, besides knowing the SEER rating of a unit, and as we saw, the higher the number, the more efficient the unit, and you will save on your electricity bill. So, having a unit, purchasing a unit, and taking the unit to be installed for your customer, there are some important tools which technicians must have with these systems that is being on which is coming to our market now with these new type of refrigerants. One of the tools that is required is a manifold gauge. Most of us have a manifold gauge, but we will see the importance of a manifold gauge. So, how manifold gauge works.
Is an important equipment in HVAC. A manifold gauge is required for many repairing processes in HVAC. Therefore, knowing how a manifold gauge works is very important. So, in this video, we will know how manifold gauge works. We can measure the pressure of refrigerant in AC unit by manifold gauge. It is used not only for refrigerant pressure measurement, but also for vacuuming and adding refrigerant. It has two gauges, one is low pressure gauge, and the other is high pressure gauge. And there will be two on-off valves. In this, blue color is low pressure gauge, red color is high pressure gauge. By operating the on-off valves, we can control the refrigerant flowing in this gauge. It has hoses in three colors, namely, blue, yellow, and red. The blue hose goes to the low pressure gauge. The red hose goes to the high pressure gauge. And yellow hose is common to both gauges. Manifold is the name of this part, which connects all these hoses and gauges. This is the sight glass, through which the refrigerant flow can be seen. This sight glass is not available in all gauges. If you need sight glass, check and buy while buying gauge. At the back side of the gauge, you can see three dummy connections. When we are not using the gauge, we can keep the hoses connected to it. With this, the inside of the hose can be kept clean, without dust. Now let's see how it works. This is the cross-sectional image of manifold gauge. This is low pressure gauge. This is high pressure gauge. This is the on-off valve in the low pressure gauge. This is the on-off valve in the high pressure gauge. This is the blue hose, this is the yellow hose, and this is the red hose. The blue hose and red hose are directly connected to the gauge. Yellow hose is connected in common to both. By controlling the on-off valve, the yellow hose can be used for low pressure or high pressure gauge. For example, after connecting the blue or red hose to the unit, the refrigerant will travel through the hose to the gauge. Through this, you can know the pressure of refrigerant. Now, when you open the on-off valve, refrigerant will start going to the recovery cylinder through the yellow hose. This is how the refrigerant is discharged from the unit. To charge the refrigerant in the unit, connect the yellow hose to the refrigerant cylinder, and connect the blue hose to the low pressure side of the unit, and when you open the valve, the refrigerant will go from the cylinder to the unit. This is the basic working details of manifold gauge. If you have any doubts, please ask in the comments section. In subsequent videos, how to charge the refrigerant, how to vacuum and how to check the pressure of the refrigerant can be seen continuously. If the video is useful, please like the video and subscribe to our Zebra Learnings English channel.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, all the young men out there who is on the field, it is important to have a proper, not just a manifold gauge, a proper manifold gauge, and more so with these new type of refrigerants which is mildly flammable. Now, this gauge is a manifold gauge, and with these new refrigerants, hydrocarbons, there is also another gauge which is important and which we must have, all technicians must have, a micron gauge. So bear in mind, we just saw an example of the manifold gauge and how it operates. Now there is a micron gauge. So what is a micron gauge?
Have you ever heard of a micron gauge? Whenever we evacuate or vac down an AC or heat pump system, we need to ensure that we remove all the air, all of the nitrogen from pressure testing, and all of the moisture in the pipework. Moisture in pipework will start boiling away at lower temperatures in a vacuum. Less than 500 microns is ideal for pulling that moisture out of the system. You'll see the manifold here does not give you any indication of the level of microns in the pipework. To pull a decent vacuum, we want to get around 200 microns. Generally, I pull a bit less, shut the valve off for 10 minutes and ensure it doesn't creep up. Have you ever heard of a
to have a micron gauge, because as we see the illustration, the manifold age wasn't able to detect the microns or how far down it's supposed to go. So it is important to have a micron gauge. So the question would be asked, what is a micron? So we will see what is a micron. Hence the reason why a micron gauge is important. What is a micron? What is a micron?
Micron is a very popular buzzword. But how long have we been using the micron as a guideline? What is a micron? And just how small is it? Micron is actually short for micrometer. Put simply, a micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter, or 0.000001 meters. It can also be expressed as 1,000th of a millimeter, or 39 millionths of an inch. There are plenty of size comparisons that can be found online, like this chart that shows how a micron is smaller than even bacteria. As you can see, microns are well below the limit of visibility, which means that some of the tolerances being measured in today's manufacturing are too small to be seen by the human eye. Even this hair is 50 to 100 times the size of a micron, meaning for measurements that call for 25 micron accuracy, we are literally splitting hairs.
So, to the young men who are looking on and who is in the field and understanding that most of the split units, most of the big system pretty soon will have R32 or R44B. It is important 454B, my mistake, 454B, it is important that we get the right tools. We get the right tools as to not to foul up the system. A manifold gauge and a micron gauge. A micron gauge, most of us on the field does not have a micron gauge. So based on these refrigerants, I will use a word, it's a necessity. It is a necessity to have within your tools now a micron gauge.
Have you ever heard of a...
So as we see, the manifold gauge and the micron gauge is attached to the manifold gauge. Because as the slide indicated, we wouldn't see the gauge on the manifold as it pulled down to a specific number to go down to the microns, and we saw what is a micron. So director, let us say what is a micron again. Or if you wish, you could run this slide with the micron gauge. Let us run this slide with the micron gauge, and then we'll go to here what is a micron to show that a micron gauge is important. So first, let us run this full slide again.
We evacuate or vac down an AC or heat pump system. Have you ever heard of a micron gauge? Whenever we evacuate or vac down an AC or heat pump system, we need to ensure that we remove all the air, all of the nitrogen from pressure testing, and all of the moisture in the pipework. Moisture in pipework will start boiling away at lower temperatures in a vacuum. Less than 500 microns is ideal for pulling that moisture out of the system. You'll see the manifold here does not give you any indication of the level of microns in the pipework. To pull a decent vacuum, we want to get around 200 microns. Generally, I pull a bit less, shut the valve off for 10 minutes, and ensure it doesn't creep up.
Micron is a very popular buzzword. But how long have we been using the micron as a guideline? What is a micron? And just how small is it? Micron is actually short for micrometer. Put simply, a micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter, or 0.000001 meters. It can also be expressed as 1,000th of a millimeter or 39 millionths of an inch. There are plenty of size comparisons that can be found online, like this chart that shows how a micron is smaller than even bacteria. As you can see, microns are well below the limit of visibility, which means that some of the tolerances being measured in today's manufacturing are too small to be seen by the human eye. Even this hair is 50 to 100 times the size of a micron, meaning for measurements that call for 25 micron accuracy, we are literally splitting hairs.
So, we now know that we cannot see a micron with the naked eye. So we'll go for a break, and when we come back, we will learn how to vacuum an AC system step by step. So we see, we know we're supposed to look at the SAE rating of our units in moving forward. It is important that we look at our SAE rating, which would identify the efficiency of the unit. The higher the SAE rating, the more efficient. So therefore you pay less by T&Tech, but you would pay more for the unit, more or less, of course, because the higher the SAE rating, it means it's more efficient, and you'll have to pay that cost up front. And then once you have the unit and the technician you purchase the unit through the technician, and the technician come, he must have his manifold gauge, his micron gauge, and a vacuum pump. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion.
Due to climate change and increasing temperatures, Supreme Air Conditioning of 25 Councilman Circular Barataria has reduced the prices on all brand AC units, residential and commercial. Call us at 689-3087 or 365-1163. Already have air-conditioned units? Need reliable professional service? Then call Supreme Air Conditioning at 689-3087 or 365-1163. Supreme Air Conditioning is not only about competing prices. We do it right the first time.
A successful business is the quality of the human being that you have working in that business. If you have quality, you end up with a quality business. It's as simple as that.
Peak Technologies Limited is primarily an air conditioning contracting company. We offer commercial and residential air conditioning, sales, installation and service. Our small unit sales division is responsible for sales and installation, that is for residential air conditioning. Then we have the commercial air conditioning aspect where engineering does the design and installation along with ductwork and so on. We have our service department, which conducts all the maintenance servicing for our contract customers.
Yes, as discussed before the break, we spoke about the two refrigerants, R32 and 454B, which would be on our market, or which is already on the market in our air conditioning units, the R32 and R454B. We also spoke about the efficiency in terms of the CR rating, which I want to advise customers who are purchasing units to look at the CR rating. The CR rating is the seasonal energy efficiency ratio. And to each CR rating, there is a number or a figure which is attached to the unit, which would identify the efficiency of the unit. So the higher the number, the more efficient, and more than likely you will have to pay more. Because the idea is to eliminate that high amperage, which Stantec feeds off of. So in terms of the CR rating, less turbulence, for a simple word, so you pay less in the long run. We also spoke about the manifold gauge, which is important to the technician. So when we go into customers' homes, it is required by the technician who comes in your home with this new unit to have a proper manifold gauge along with a proper micron gauge. It is imperative, it is important that these tools be had by technicians in moving forward with this new type of refrigerant. We also went into what is a micron, and we saw in the slide that you cannot see a micron with the naked eye. Hence the reason why you will need the micron gauge. So ladies and gentlemen, before we go back into the subject matter, there are two segments on air conditioning and refrigeration talks in which we will go into. The first one is things that makes you go, oops. Things that makes you go, oops. There are times when air conditioning and refrigeration talk would give a little line up. So this evening, tonight, we will give a little line up on things that makes you go, oops. For those of you who doesn't know what transpired there, that is the outdoor unit or the condenser. And when the young man put up the condenser, the area where the air is supposed to be discharged supposed to be facing out. And we can see he is placing the condenser with the fan against the wall, against the house, as you can see there. So apparently somebody told him something, and he gave a little smile, and then he turned it around. And we could see where he held his head. So the right way is to let the condenser fan face on the outside to pull the hot air on the outside. So things like this would make me go, oops. We also have a segment, ladies and gentlemen, schools that shine bright.
Principals, along with
School that shine bright, the director will go into this segment and then I'll speak on it.
principals, along with teachers, do their best to instill discipline, tolerance, and productivity in their students. Schools that excel should be celebrated. Let's celebrate schools that shine bright.
When I came up with this program, Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Talks, I also came up with the segment, things that makes you go, oops, and schools that shine bright. School right now is on vacation, and I urge you young men, all you young people who are always on your phone, to take some time out and do some physical. Yes, parents is glad to know that their children is inside based on how things is going, and to know when they're on their devices, they are inside and they are comfortable. Saying that, schools that shine bright, I've looked at schools in terms of how there are negatives which will go up on social media in a flash on social media where negative is concerned, where schools are concerned. And I told myself, you know what? Let's try and get positive. There are a lot of schools where positive takes place. And for some strange reason, we do not pay attention to those things. Just like negatives always up front on social media. Because people have an urge for the negatives. So in my humble way, school is closed right now. I'm looking, as I move around, I see the mannerism of students, how the teachers interact. At break time, I look around, and pretty soon, we'll be engaging into another school where we would celebrate that school. We already celebrated a school on this program, the St. Joseph TML Primary, with the principal, Mr. Rashid Ali. And so very soon, we will engage another school. So school that shines bright is part of this program as we will continue in the near future. So as we go back to the official part of the program, the last thing we spoke about is what is a micron? And we will go now how to vacuum an AC unit step by step. So when the customer purchases the unit and we go to the customer's home and we put on our gauge, after the customer see the share rating and what have you, we use our micron gauge and now we are about to vacuum the system. So without further ado, let's see in terms of vacuuming a system.
In this video, we are going to learn how to vacuum an AC unit using a manifold gauge. First, let's understand why we perform a vacuuming process. Vacuuming is done when installing a new AC unit or after performing maintenance work on the indoor unit. By vacuuming, we can remove moisture, air, and non-condensable gases from the coil. These gases can significantly affect the performance of the AC unit, so it is crucial to remove them. Additionally, vacuuming helps detect any leaks in the unit. Now, let's see how to vacuum an AC unit. The two essential pieces of equipment required for this process: a vacuum pump a manifold gauge. We can also use a micron gauge for this process. With a micron gauge, we can get more accurate readings. If you would like a video on how to vacuum using a micron gauge, let me know in the comments, and I'll prepare and upload that video. In this video, we will use only the manifold gauge. When installing a new unit, the refrigerant is typically pumped down and stored in the outdoor unit. Similarly, when performing maintenance work on the indoor unit, the refrigerant is pumped down and stored in the outdoor unit. We have already explained how to perform a pump down process in a previous video. You can find the link to that video in the description and the first comment. Check it out if needed. First, as always, make sure to wear the necessary safety PPEs. Before starting the work, turn off the unit. Next, connect the yellow hose of the manifold gauge to the vacuum pump and the low pressure side hose to the suction line of the unit. In this process, we will use only the low pressure side gauge and won't use the high pressure side gauge. Once both hoses are connected, turn on the vacuum pump and open the valve in the gauge. The pump will start removing all the non-condensable gases from the evaporator and coil. As air and gas are removed, the pressure on the gauge will gradually decrease. We can vacuum for 15 to 20 minutes. During this process, the pressure on the gauge will reach -30 psi. After 20 minutes, close the gauge valve and turn off the vacuum pump. After turning it off, wait for some time and check if the pressure on the gauge increases. If there's a leak in the coil, air will enter through the leak, causing the pressure on the gauge to rise. If the leak is very small, it may take more time for the pressure to increase. The longer you wait, the more accurately you can confirm whether there's a leak. If the pressure doesn't increase, it means there's no leak in the coil. Once you confirm there's no leak, use a hex key to open the suction line valve. After fully opening the suction line valve, open the discharge line valve as well. This will allow the refrigerant stored in the outdoor unit to flow completely through the indoor unit and coil. Finally, remove the manifold gauge from the unit and then start the unit. This completes the vacuuming process for an AC unit. In the next video, we'll learn how to charge refrigerant after the vacuuming process. If you found this video useful, please like it and share it with anyone who might benefit.
So technicians, air condition technicians, and customers, this episode is to enlighten you all as to when technicians come at your homes, dealing with split units. First off, the unit is pre-charged. So there is refrigerant in the unit, within the system. The unit must be vacuumed about 15 minutes. Ensure that technicians come with a manifold gauge at your homes. Customers, make sure technicians come at your home with a proper manifold gauge, because it's important to remove moisture, air, and non-condensable gases within the lines before they open up that line for the gas to go to the evaporator. And that vacuuming is supposed to take at least 15 minutes. It is important that we do the job right the first time. It is important, customers, that you educate yourselves in terms of the SEER rating on the unit to see what you are getting for your hard-earned money. It is important that technicians doesn't come at your homes without a vacuum pump. These gauges could be hooked up and they just bleed the line. So I urge the customers who are spending their hard-earned money to ensure that technicians doesn't come at your home because the unit is pre-charged with refrigerant, they just connect the hose and bleed the line out and start the unit. Yes, the unit will function. It might function for a year, 2 years, or probably 3 years. But once the unit is vacuumed properly and the right procedures are taken, your unit could last up to 10 years, and that is providing you are doing a proper service. A proper maintenance program is put in place with your technician or your service provider so that your unit would be serviced on time, regularly, so you get a proper lifespan with your unit. So we spoke about the new type of refrigerants, the R32 and the R454B, the SEER rating, which is important, your manifold gauge, which is important, where you must go by the customer with. Yeah? We also spoke of the micron gauge, which is also important because we identify what is a micron. So we need the micron gauge in vacuuming the system, and especially with these new types of refrigerants. I stress, we need micron gauges. All you technicians, all you air condition technicians, it is important, I stress customers, ensure that technician comes at your home when they are installing these new units, which has the R32, mostly split systems. I'm emphasizing on the split system, the small mini splits, yeah, and how to vacuum the system and not purging the system. So customers, those who are spending your money, this program was dedicated to you all. And so I have something here, I have a next video which I would like to show, which came up on my air condition and refrigeration talks profile, which I will share with our Trinidad community. So without further ado, I would love for us to look at this video as we move on.
The future is in motion, and with that, the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA, along with its partners, are taking a global step to remove ozone-harming and depleting substances ODS from circulation within the cooling and foam-producing industries. Following the early phase-out of chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, in 2006, Jamaica began phasing out their replacements, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, HCFCs, a process currently underway and set for completion by 2030, despite 2024 imports being less than 1/5 of the HCFCs allocated for the 2025 to 2029 quota period. The need for the discontinued use of such compounds calls for companies within the sector and, by extension, young trainees attending universities and the Hart NSTA Trust to get training under the Hydrochlorofluorocarbons Phase-Out Management Plan HPMP program.
We encourage all the entities in Jamaica that involve in refrigeration and air conditioning to get their people trained in the area.
As a female in this industry, I really hope I can inspire more females to take on the role, because, come on, it takes more than just one person to get this done.
We have done well as a country. We have done well as technicians in terms of upgrading our skills to just meet the Jamaica target.
It is with great excitement that I stand here today to bring greetings and to publicly declare the support of the Hart NSTA Trust for the establishment and operation of 7 refrigerant recovery, recycling and reclamation centers in Jamaica. This is not just a unique initiative, but it is also a bold one that engenders pride for all parties involved.
It is in this regard that the National Ozone Unit has partnered with you, our key stakeholders, in establishing these centers island-wide. The overall objective of the center is to sustain the momentum of the complete phase out of the use of ODSs in the refrigeration and air conditioning sector, and that's the target by 2030.
Under the HPMP, we have been able to far advance the phase out of the HCFCs far ahead of the targets to the extent that the initial targets were for 2040 for the complete phase out of the HCFCs, and now we have shifted that to 2030, and even so we are now far ahead of the 2030 deadline in terms of our consumption. In fact, Jamaica is doing so well that if we were to advance it further, likely we would still be successful. So we will achieve our target based on the analysis that we have done.
We started 28 years ago when NEPA just started the program in phasing out the CFC. We were the ones that go right across the island doing two things. One, in changing out or retrofitting the equipment, and two, getting the stakeholders, the owners of equipment, convincing them of the need, the necessity to retrofit from the CFC to the new refrigerant. Most of our technicians now are aware of what it is to retrofit. It's easy for them. The drawback is we would like to have more equipment, because it is easy to say change from one refrigerant to the next, but you can't change unless you have the machine to recover one refrigerant, to recycle the refrigerant, and to introduce that replacement refrigerant in the system.
I did a refresher course in 2005 under the terminal phase-out management plan, what we call the TPMP, and since then I've helped out with the Airline management, and then after that we started working on the HPMP. I've trained technicians, I've trained importers, and recently I've been doing a lot of training as far as enforcement officers are concerned.
I was not as informed, but thanks to NEPA and the various workshops they have offered, I am now more informed and can speak with more confidence on the different systems as well as what is needed in the industry.
And so we encourage all the entities in Jamaica that involve in refrigeration and air conditioning to get their people trained in the area. Not everybody needs to be a technician, but everybody in the field needs to understand the implication of their action in terms of what they are doing. So far through NEPA, yes, we have trained quite a few people and it looks good.
Over 193 technicians and more than 230 enforcement officers trained with select government offices in the hydrochlorofluorocarbon phase-out management plan HPMP program, all in a bid to protect our ozone layer and our planet.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the process of phasing down our hydrocarbons, the R410A, and we see there are 7 refrigerant recovery, recycling, and reclamation centers, 7 in Jamaica. So my question is, how much do we have in Trinidad? And next week, God Spare Life, I hope to have ARIA with us. I spoke to the management of ARIA, and I will hope we could have a discussion based on where we are at in terms of our refrigerant recovery, recycling, and reclamation centers. So see, we are coming to a close. I wish to thank each and everyone for staying on air conditioning and refrigeration talks. So blessings. See you all next week. God Spare Life.
Dear kind and loving Father, who art in heaven, as we embark on this venture in the interest of the air conditioning and refrigeration industry, we ask, dear God, that our discussions and interactions be meaningful, respectful, and transparent as we strive to uplift the standards in these industries, especially the air conditioning industry. We ask, dear God, that you grant us the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to engage in a meaningful way and bring about positive change. Amen.